I stood there frozen at my 5-year-old son's funeral, staring at the tiny casket covered in blue and white flowers. Noah loved blue. The weight of grief crushed my chest as relatives whispered condolences I barely heard. My phone vibrated in my pocket. A text from Sophia, my wife. Sorry, important business meeting. My hands trembled not from sadness anymore but from rage. I knew exactly where she was right now. In Hawaii, laughing on a beach with her lover, while our son was being lowered into the ground. What she doesn't know is I have plans for her return. If you're watching this while dealing with betrayal, drop a comment below letting me know what you would do in my situation. Like and subscribe to see what happened when Sophia finally returned home. The first time I saw Sophia was at the university library in Chicago 8 years ago. I was studying computer science, hunched over coding textbooks when she walked in with her economics notes and coffee. Her dark hair fell in perfect waves, framing a face that made me forget the algorithm I had been working on for hours. I pretended to need the same reference book she was using, and somehow that awkward introduction led to coffee, which led to dinner, which led to the best 2 years of dating I could have imagined. Sophia was everything I wanted. Smart, driven, beautiful, and ambitious about her future in finance. When I proposed on the shore of Lake Michigan at sunset, her eyes filled with tears as she said yes. The wedding was perfect, intimate, with just close friends and family. I remember thinking during our first dance how lucky I was, how this incredible woman had chosen me, Orville Wilson, a somewhat nerdy software developer with big dreams. When Noah came along a year later, our happiness felt complete. He was perfect with his mother's dark hair and my green eyes. The first time I held him, watching his tiny fingers wrap around mine, I promised myself I would be the best father possible. I rearranged my work schedule to be home more, even convincing my company to let me work remotely 3 days a week. Sophia took 6 months of maternity leave, and those early days were exhausting but magical. For 3 beautiful years, we were the family I had always dreamed of having. Weekends at the park, Noah's first steps, first words, his infectious laugh when I would lift him onto my shoulders. Sophia was an attentive mother, reading bedtime stories and singing lullabies. We had our challenges like any parents, but we faced them together. At least that was what I believed. Everything changed when Sophia received a major promotion at Williams Financial Group. Suddenly, she was Assistant Director of Investment Strategy with a corner office and salary that dwarfed mine. I was genuinely happy for her. She had worked hard, stayed late, crafted impressive presentations, and deserved every bit of success. But with the promotion came changes I wasn't prepared for. The business trips started small. A weekend in New York to meet clients, 3 days in Boston for a conference, then a week in London for international meetings. Each time she returned with expensive souvenirs for Noah and designer clothes for herself. Her wardrobe transformed from practical business attire to high-end fashion. Her makeup became more elaborate, her perfume more expensive. It was around this time that Jack Peterson entered our lives, though I did not immediately recognize the threat. As the new director of investment strategy and Sophia's boss, he would occasionally call our home late in the evening about urgent portfolio adjustments. Sophia would take these calls in our home office, door closed, voice hushed. I thought nothing of it, busy with bedtime routines for Noah and my own freelance projects I took on for extra income. Soon, Sophia was coming home later and later. Dinner would sit cold on the table as Noah asked repeatedly when Mommy would be home. Just one more meeting, she would text. Working late again. Jack needs the presentation perfect for tomorrow. I accepted these excuses, picked up the slack at home, and tried to compensate for Noah's increasing disappointment when his mother missed another story time. "Where's Mommy?" Noah would ask, his small face looking up from his dinosaur pajamas. Helping people with money, I would answer the simplest explanation I could give a 4-year-old. "She'll come kiss you when she gets home." Sometimes she did. Increasingly, she didn't. I first noticed something truly wrong when Sophia's phone rang at 3 in the morning. She grabbed it quickly, took it to the bathroom, and spoke in whispers for 20 minutes. When she returned to bed, I pretended to be asleep. "Work emergency," I asked casually the next morning. "Asian markets crashed," she answered without looking up from her coffee. "Had to adjust some positions." I nodded, though I knew enough about time zones to question this explanation. Later that week, I noticed her quickly hiding her phone screen when I walked into the room. The passcode had been changed from Noah's birthday to something I didn't know. She began taking her phone into the shower, never leaving it unattended. I tried to save our marriage before I even consciously acknowledged it needed saving. I booked a surprise date night at the restaurant where we had celebrated our engagement. I arranged for my mother to watch Noah for a weekend getaway to the lakeside cabin we used to love. I bought flowers, wrote notes, tried to recreate the connection we seemed to be losing. Sophia had excuses for everything: a client dinner she couldn't miss, an important weekend strategy session. Too tired, too busy, too stressed. The rejections piled up along with my growing suspicions. Noah noticed his mother's absence more than anyone. "Does mommy not like us anymore?" he asked one night as I tucked him in alone for the 10th night in a row. The question broke my heart, and I assured him that mommy loved him very much. She was just very busy helping other people. The lie felt bitter on my tongue, but what could I tell my son? That I was beginning to wonder the same thing myself. The headaches started first. Noah would wince at bright lights asked to lie down in the middle of playtime. Then came the unexplained bruises on his skinny legs and arms. When he developed a fever that wouldn't break for 3 days, I took him to the pediatrician, who ordered blood tests just to be safe. I still remember exactly where I was standing in our kitchen when the doctor called. Noah was coloring at the table, tongue sticking out in concentration, as he tried to stay within the lines of his dinosaur coloring book. The words "acute lymphoblastic leukemia" didn't register at first. The doctor kept talking about white blood cell counts and bone marrow and specialists, but all I could see was my beautiful boy still perfectly alive and unaware that his body was betraying him. Sophia came home immediately when I called with the news. She cried, held Noah too tight, promised him everything would be okay. For 2 days, she was completely present, making calls to cancel meetings, researching treatments, contacting specialists. I allowed myself to hope that this crisis would bring us back together, that Noah's illness would remind her of what truly mattered. On the 3rd day, Jack Peterson called. Sophia took the call in our bedroom. When she emerged, she explained that there was an investment situation that required her physical presence just for 2 days. Noah was stable, tests were being run, treatment wouldn't begin immediately. She could go handle this emergency and be back before anything significant happened. I watched her pack her overnight bag with a growing numbness. Noah was napping, exhausted from the morning's blood draws. I wanted to scream at her to demand she stay, to point out that our son's life was the only emergency that mattered. But I said nothing, still clinging to the belief that this was truly about work, that she would hurry back, that we would face this together. She didn't come back in 2 days. The 2-day trip extended to 4, then a week. She called daily to check on Noah, spoke to him over video chat, seemed genuinely concerned about his test results. But she remained physically absent as I shuttled between work, home, and hospital appointments, trying to maintain normalcy for Noah while my world collapsed around me. It was during this week, while searching for an insurance document on our shared laptop, that I found the email confirmation for a hotel reservation in Maui. The booking wasn't in Sophia's name or the company's. It was under Jack Peterson, party of 2, with a note about champagne in the room and ocean view upgrade. The dates matched exactly with Sophia's current emergency business trip. My hands shook as I dug deeper. Once I started looking, the evidence was everywhere. Text messages synced to our cloud account, emails with flight confirmations, hotel receipts, photos I wish I could unsee. Not just an affair, but a relationship. Months of messages planning their getaways around her business trips, laughing about excuses, talking about their future. Some messages even mentioned Noah with Jack, consoling Sophia about having a sick kid at home and how difficult that must be for her. The betrayal was so complete, so methodical, that I sat in stunned silence for hours after discovering it. I closed the laptop eventually and went to check on Noah, who was sleeping restlessly, his forehead warm with fever. I crawled into his small bed and held him, my tears soaking into his dinosaur pillowcase, as he slept on, unaware that both his mother and my wife had already abandoned us in all the ways that mattered. I didn't confront Sophia immediately. Some calculating part of my brain decided to gather more evidence to be absolutely certain before making accusations. But another part, a part I'm not proud of, wanted to see just how far she would go, just how many lies she would tell while our son fought for his life. The answer came all too quickly. Noah's condition deteriorated rapidly. What had been concerning test results became dangerously low blood counts and immune responses. The doctors wanted to begin aggressive treatment immediately. I called Sophia, my voice breaking, as I explained the situation. "You need to come home now," I told her. Noah is being admitted to the hospital tomorrow. He needs both of us. Of course, she said, and I almost believed the concern in her voice. I'll wrap things up here and be on the first flight back. That night I overheard her on the phone with Jack, unaware that I had stepped onto the patio where she was talking. We just need to reschedule our Maui trip, she was saying, voice low. Orville is insisting I come back. The treatments are starting tomorrow. There was a pause, as Jack responded. I know, she continued, but it's just for a week or two. Once Noah is stable, I can make excuses to get away again. This doesn't change anything between us. I stood frozen, unable to comprehend how my wife, the mother of my child, could be planning her next romantic getaway while our son was fighting for his life. I walked away without confronting her, needing to save my energy for what was coming. Noah would need me fully present, not distracted by marital collapse. Sophia did come home the next day, going through the motions of concerned motherhood. She attended the initial consultation with the oncologist, held Noah's hand, as they explained in child-friendly terms what would happen, brought his favorite stuffed dinosaur to the hospital. But her phone was constantly in her hand, messages coming in that made her step out of the room regularly. As Noah began the brutal chemotherapy regimen, his tiny body reacting violently to the chemicals meant to save him, Sophia's visits to the hospital grew shorter and less frequent. She had emergency calls and critical meetings that pulled her away from his bedside. I spent nights sleeping in the uncomfortable hospital chair while Sophia went home for proper rest that I later discovered involved long phone conversations with Jack. Noah asked for her constantly. When is mommy coming became his daily question, one I had fewer and fewer answers for. Mommy has to work, buddy, I would say, helping him sip water through a straw, his lips cracked from the treatment. But she loves you very much. Can she work here, he asked, once his voice small and raspy. I miss her. I had no answer that wouldn't break both our hearts further. 6 weeks into Noah's treatment, the doctors called me into a private consultation room. The aggressive chemotherapy wasn't working as they had hoped. Noah's cancer was particularly resistant, and the latest tests showed progression rather than improvement. They wanted to try an experimental treatment, but warned me that Noah's prognosis was now much more serious. Without explicitly saying it, they were preparing me for the possibility that my son might not survive. I called Sophia immediately from the consultation room, not trusting myself to have this conversation in front of Noah. The cancer isn't responding, I said when she answered, not bothering with pleasantries. The doctors say we need to prepare for the worst. There was silence on the line. Sophia, did you hear me? Our son is dying. You need to be here. Yes, of course, she finally responded, her voice oddly distant. I'll clear my schedule. How long does he? She couldn't finish the sentence. Days, maybe a week, I said, the words burning my throat. They're not sure. I'll be there tonight, she promised. She didn't come that night. Or the next morning. She called with excuses about flights and meetings that couldn't be rescheduled. I stopped listening, focusing entirely on Noah, whose condition was declining rapidly. His once energetic body was now thin and frail, his beautiful face swollen from medications. Despite his suffering, Noah remained incredibly brave. He asked me to read his favorite dinosaur books over and over, pointing to the pictures with fingers bruised from IV needles. He made up stories about adventures he wanted to have when he got better, trips to see real dinosaur bones in museums, camping trips where we could see the stars. Will mommy come camping too? He asked during one of these stories. If you want her to, buddy, I answered, fighting back tears. I want both of you, he said simply, before drifting off to sleep, exhausted from the brief conversation. On what would be the last day of Noah's life, Sophia finally called to say she was boarding a flight and would be there by evening. But as the day progressed, it became clear Noah wouldn't wait that long. His breathing became labored, his consciousness fading in and out. The doctors increased his pain medication, making him comfortable but less responsive. In a moment of lucidity, Noah opened his eyes and looked directly at me. Daddy, he whispered, I'm scared. I climbed onto the hospital bed beside him, careful of the tubes and wires, and held him against my chest like I did when he was a baby. I'm right here, I promised. Daddy's got you. Tell me the dinosaur story again, he requested, his voice barely audible. So I told him about the brave Triceratops who protected all the other dinosaurs, who was strong and kind and loved by everyone in the prehistoric world. As I spoke, I felt Noah's breathing slow, becoming more peaceful. By the time I finished the story, he was gone, slipping away so quietly I didn't immediately realize the moment had passed. I held him for hours afterward, unable to let go, unable to accept that my beautiful boy would never again laugh or play or call me daddy. The nurses were kind, giving me time, bringing me water, saying nothing when I wept uncontrollably. Somewhere in that timeless grief, my phone buzzed repeatedly. I finally checked it to find multiple messages from Sophia. Flight delayed due to weather. Might not make it tonight after all. How is he doing? And finally, the message that would haunt me forever. Sorry, important business meeting came up. We'll try to get there tomorrow morning. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to say. Noah was gone, and his mother had chosen a business meeting over being with him in his final moments. The next morning, numb and moving through preparations I never imagined making, I received confirmation of exactly what that important business meeting was. A mutual friend sent me a screenshot from Jack Peterson's Instagram story, quickly deleted but not before being captured. It showed Sophia laughing on a Hawaiian beach, cocktail in hand, with the caption "Paradise found with my favorite person." The date stamp was from the exact time Noah had been taking his last breaths. The funeral arrangements passed in a blur. I selected a small blue casket, chose Noah's favorite dinosaur pajamas for him to wear, picked wildflowers for his service because he always stopped to pick them on our walks. Through it all, Sophia remained unreachable, her phone going straight to voicemail. I told family and friends she was overwhelmed with grief, unable to function, being cared for by friends. The lies tasted like ashes but were easier than explaining the unthinkable truth. On the day of the funeral, standing beside the tiny grave as distant relatives murmured about Sophia's absence, my phone vibrated with her text. "Sorry, important business meeting. Send pictures." In that moment, something inside me broke completely. Not just my heart, which had been breaking gradually since Noah's diagnosis, but something fundamental about how I viewed the world. I had believed in love and family, in the basic decency of the woman I had married. Now I understood that some betrayals go beyond forgiveness, beyond understanding, beyond anything that can ever be repaired. I returned to our empty house after the funeral, the silence deafening without Noah's laughter or footsteps. His toys still scattered across the living room floor. His dinosaur sheets still on his bed, his toothbrush still in the bathroom. Everywhere I looked was evidence of a life cut tragically short, a future erased. In a fit of rage, unlike anything I had ever experienced, I swept everything off our mantel, sending our wedding photos crashing to the floor. I tore Sophia's clothes from the closet, shredded photographs, screamed until my voice gave out. When exhaustion finally overcame me, I collapsed on Noah's bed, clutching his favorite stuffed triceratops, and slept for nearly 20 hours straight. I might have continued in that destructive spiral, if not for James, my oldest friend from college, who let himself in with the spare key and found me unshaven, unwashed, and barely functioning. "This isn't what Noah would want," he said simply after forcing me to shower and eat. "And it isn't what you deserve." "What do I deserve?" I asked bitterly. "My son is dead, and my wife is screwing her boss in Hawaii." James looked shocked. "What are you talking about?" I showed him everything. The hotel reservations, the text messages, the Instagram photo. His expression hardened with each revelation. "So what are you going to do about it?" he asked, finally. The question pulled me from my fog of grief and rage. Do about it. Until that moment, I had been reacting, suffering, spiraling. I hadn't considered taking action, taking control. "I don't know," I admitted. "Well, I think you should make sure she doesn't get away with this," James said firmly. "Not legally, not socially, not in any way." His words ignited something in me. Not just anger, but purpose. Noah deserved better than a father who collapsed under grief. And Sophia deserved consequences for her unimaginable betrayal. Over the next 3 days, with James's help, I formulated a plan. First, I contacted a divorce attorney recommended as the barracuda of breakups, providing all evidence of Sophia's infidelity and abandonment during Noah's illness and death. Then I transferred most of our joint savings into a new account in my name, leaving just enough to avoid legal issues, and donated a significant portion to the children's cancer ward where Noah had been treated. I packed up all of Sophia's possessions, carefully, methodically, boxing everything except items related to Noah. Those I left exactly where they were: his artwork on the refrigerator, his photos on the walls, his handprints in clay on her nightstand. In their place, I put enlarged photos from Noah's funeral. The tiny casket, the gravesite, the mourners, all the moments she had missed, all arranged carefully throughout the house where she couldn't avoid seeing them. I printed out her text messages and taped them to the bathroom mirror. Sorry, important business meeting. Finally, I invited both our families and closest friends to a memorial gathering at our house, scheduled for the evening of Sophia's expected return. I told them only that it was important for everyone who loved Noah to be there. I didn't mention that Sophia had no idea they would be there, or what they were about to learn. The day Sophia was due to return, I sat calmly in our living room surrounded by Noah's things and funeral photos waiting. When her key turned in the lock, I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just a cold, clear purpose. She entered looking tanned and rested, designer sunglasses pushed up into her hair, rolling an expensive suitcase behind her. For a moment, she didn't notice the changes to the house, the people sitting silently in the living room. She was midway through a sentence about flight delays when she froze, finally registering the scene before her. "What is this?" she asked, eyes darting between familiar faces, all staring at her with expressions ranging from confusion to disgust. I stood slowly, feeling oddly calm. "This is the memorial service for Noah," I said clearly. "The one you missed, because you were in Hawaii with Jack Peterson." Her face drained of color. "I don't know what you're talking about. I had business meetings in Chicago. The flights to get back were impossible." I laughed, a hollow sound with no humor. "Interesting, because according to the resort charges on our joint credit card and Jack's Instagram, you were at the Royal Hawaiian on Waikiki Beach." I turned to our assembled family and friends. While our 5-year-old son took his last breath, while we lowered his body into the ground, Sophia was having a romantic getaway with her boss. The collective gasp was audible. Sophia's mother stood up, hand over her mouth. My parents looked shell-shocked. Our friends stared in disbelief. "You don't understand," Sophia began desperately. "I was under so much stress with Noah's illness. Jack was supporting me through it. It wasn't planned to be during. I didn't know he would die while you were gone," I finished for her. "Is that what you didn't expect? That your son would be inconsiderate enough to die while you were enjoying beach cocktails?" I walked to the television and played the video I had taken of Noah in his final days, asking for his mother. Watching Sophia crumble as she heard our son's voice was the only satisfaction I had felt since his death. As if on cosmic cue, Sophia's phone rang. The caller ID displayed Jack's name. Without asking permission, I grabbed it and answered on speaker. "Hey, beautiful." Jack's voice came through clearly, landed safely. How did the husband take the business trip excuse? The silence that followed was absolute. Sophia's face contorted in horror as she realized the full exposure of her deception. "Jack," she finally managed, "I'm on speaker. My family is here." Another long pause. "Shit," was all Jack said before hanging up. What followed was both the most painful and most necessary conversation of our lives. Every question from family members, every horrified realization, every tearful attempt at explanation from Sophia that rang increasingly hollow. I watched as the woman I had loved, the mother of my child, lost everything that should have mattered to her because of choices that now could never be undone. Sophia's parents were the first to leave her mother, unable to even look at her. My parents followed my father, placing a supportive hand on my shoulder as they went. Friends departed in awkward silence, some hugging me, none acknowledging Sophia. By evening's end, we were alone in the house that had once held our family. "I want a divorce," I said simply. "The papers are already being prepared." Sophia collapsed onto the couch, makeup streaked with tears. "Orville, please," she begged. "I made a terrible mistake. I was scared of Noah's illness, of losing him. I couldn't cope. Jack was an escape." It didn't mean anything. It meant everything. I corrected her. "It meant you weren't here when our son asked for you with his dying breath. It meant you chose yourself over him in his greatest moment of need. There is no coming back from that." That night, Sophia slept in the guest room. By morning, I had changed the locks and left the divorce papers on the front porch. It was the last time I would ever allow her in our home. The aftermath was as expected. Jack dropped Sophia immediately when the scandal threatened his position at the firm. She lost her job, her reputation, and eventually moved to another state to escape the whispers and judgment. I received everything in the divorce settlement, the judge particularly unsympathetic to a mother who had abandoned her dying child for an affair. For months after I barely functioned. I took leave from work, spent days staring at Noah's photos and nights dreaming of his voice. The grief was all-consuming, a physical weight that made even breathing feel like an impossible effort. But gradually, with professional help and the support of friends like James, I found ways to move forward without moving on. I established the Noah Wilson Foundation, dedicated to supporting families of children with cancer, ensuring parents could afford to be with their children during treatment without financial worry. The foundation became my purpose, my way of making Noah's short life continue to have meaning and impact. Slowly, painfully, I began to heal. Not from the loss of Noah, which would always be an open wound, but from the betrayal of Sophia. I learned that it was possible to excise poisonous relationships without poisoning your ability to trust again. I sold our house, unable to live surrounded by memories, and moved to a smaller place closer to the hospital where I volunteered weekly. About a year after Noah's death at a support group for parents who had lost children, I met Laura. She had lost her daughter to the same cancer that took Noah, and something in her quiet strength resonated with me. We started as friends, understanding each other's grief in ways others couldn't. Months later, that friendship evolved into something deeper, more healing than I thought possible again. 2 years after Noah died, I scattered some of his ashes at our favorite camping spot under the stars he loved so much. Laura stood beside me, her hand in mine, as I said goodbye to my son one more time. The pain of losing Noah will never completely disappear. There are still days when grief ambushes me when I see a child his age, or hear a dinosaur reference, and have to stop to catch my breath, but I've learned to carry that grief, alongside joy, to honor Noah's memory by living fully rather than getting lost in what might have been. As for Sophia, I heard she eventually remarried and moved overseas. I wish her nothing, neither good nor ill. The space she once occupied in my heart has been filled with memories of Noah and new love that respects rather than erases the past. Every morning I place fresh flowers on the dinosaur figurine that sits on my desk, a small ritual to start my day with Noah in my thoughts. And every night I thank the universe for the 5 beautiful years I had with him, which taught me more about love than most people learn in a lifetime. If there is anything I could share from this journey through unimaginable loss and betrayal, it is this: the capacity of the human heart to heal is as infinite as its capacity to love. Even in our darkest moments, light eventually finds a way back in. Have you ever had to rebuild your life after devastating loss or betrayal? Share your story in the comments below. And if this resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share to help others who might be walking similar difficult paths. Remember, even in our most painful moments, we are never truly alone. Thank you for listening to my story, and may you find strength in whatever challenges you face.